Hi everyone, it's Nicole Elissa and I'm your host for the Bold and Blissful Women Summit. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Julia Ford Carther. She is a dating coach, EQ expert, and the founder of the Self-Love Formula. She's going to be talking to us today about balance, right? And how to create balance in our lives between our love lives, professional lives, and in general. We're going to be talking about balance because it's really important. So, Julia, I want to welcome you. Would you like to say something about yourself? What are you currently doing? I'm really excited to have you here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here as well. This is going to be a great day for everybody, and I'm just so excited to speak with you, Nicole, and figure out how I can help everybody achieve more balance in their life. So yeah, your introduction was great. I'm honored to be here. I am, like Nicole said, I am a dating coach, an EQ expert, which really means EQ stands for emotional intelligence. And so I help my clients understand more about that side of themselves. A lot of people, a lot of women I knew before I got into this space had very high IQs and were very successful in their careers. And when it came to utilizing their IQ, everything was hunky-dory. But as soon as it got to the emotional side of life and where they had to tap into that EQ, things started to fall apart. So in my experience, when your EQ matches your IQ, you're really able to make life, dating, career, family decisions that really get you what you want.
I love that. I'm all about balance and having it all, and I know exactly what you mean about needing it to be smooth or the best that we can. So I wanted to ask you, Julia, what does being off balance feel like or look like in a woman, let's say?
Sure. So let me just start with defining what being in balance is, so then you can get a better idea of what being off balance feels like. Being in balance is when your head matches up with your heart, meaning with what you truly want, like in your hardest of hearts, your deepest desires. If you're really listening to your intuition, that's where she's guiding you, is towards your heart. When you are acting on those heart feelings and using your mind to make, responsible life decisions or logical decisions or practical decisions that are working towards what your heart wants, you are going to be in balance. That's alignment. And so when you're aligned, you're going to feel in tune with yourself and attuned, and it's a wonderful feeling. So feeling off balance would be the opposite of that. And that happens when what you want and what you've planned and your goals and all those desires and your dreams, when you are actively behaving, doing, saying anything that is not congruent with those desires, that is when you're off balance. And what that feels like is there's this push-pull. There's always going to be this kind of disconnect, this friction between what you want to be doing or saying versus what it is you're actually doing or saying. And when the balance gets so off, it can get pretty severe because there's a stress that's involved with being off balance. For me, what happened was I got so off balance that I was chronically stressed, like over the course of almost 2 years. And this was recent. And so what ended up happening first, my body struck out on me and went on strike, and I started breaking out, which was something that I had never done in all 31 years of life. So that was like, what is happening? But of course, we don't always listen to these cues, right? And so I just went to the dermatologist. I got some great skincare. Boom, done. Well, my body was like, okay, you don't want to listen? We're going to take it to the next level. And my hair started falling out. And that was when, and there, I got a lot of hair. It's a big part of who I am, and I love it. And to me, it's an aspect of my identity. So when that started being threatened, I was like, nope, we got to do something different. I knew I needed to get back in balance. Something was off. I knew what was going on. I knew that I was off balance, and so I started taking steps to get back on balance. But you will feel a stress. You will feel as if you're being pulled in two different directions.
Yeah, that's so true. And you mentioned something really important, which I think like I would like to talk a little bit more of. You mentioned your intuition. How important is your intuition? Because sometimes I know that when women are trying to balance out their feminine and their masculine, they're so used to following data, structures, numbers, right? So how does your intuition play into it, and why is it super important to follow it?
So I don't do anything these days without consulting my intuition. It's gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I get it. You know more than I do. Because I'm very engaged. I like organization. I like structure. I'm a Capricorn. I mean, if it's not like organized and put out on, in a to-do list and a checklist, I'm like, what? That doesn't exist. So I get the whole logic side of it, but there's also, the other half of me that feels my way through decisions. If I have a client that comes to me and she's presenting her story or a situation, or if I have a project that's presented to me, I will get an instantaneous yes or no. And it's so fast and it's so fleeting that if you're not used to exercising and listening to your intuition, because it is a muscle that you have to work on. It doesn't, we all have it, but if you have been ignoring it for a while, it's hard to really trust it. So it's gotten to the point now that something will be presented to me, and it's just like that, yes or no. And then what I'll do, so I'll get the yes or the no, and then what I'll do to satisfy the logical side, right? Because it's scary to trust something that's that like instantaneous and that fleeting, and there's no reason behind it. It's just a feeling. So then what I'll do is I'll try and I'll work out the logistics of it. Does this make sense? Does this make my financial sense? If it was a date, back when I was dating, it would be like, well, like do we want to give them another shot? Maybe, maybe there's something else there. Maybe there's, we have fun in this way, but I could ignore, blah, blah, blah. So if you really do need to feel that you have to satisfy the practical and logical side of it, then there are ways that you can do the numbers of it. But the answer really is in that first yes or no. And so the way that I ask myself now, if I start getting very confused about something, and this happens all the time, I will say, is it a hell yes? If it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. and it's that simple, and it sounds oversimplified, but trust me, it works every single time and without fail, because it's that little voice that's telling you, oh, like this isn't aligned with what you truly desire, or this person is not going to be healthy for you, or this date is not going to give you what you want in a relationship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's how I make all my decisions. It really is. It's how I make all my decisions, and it's never led me astray.
That's so powerful. And I personally think, I love that you mentioned that it's simple. For me personally, and I don't know if this is your case, I used to tend to overcomplicate things. So in my mind, I always remind myself, hey, let's go back to basics. This is really easy, really simple. Is it a yes or a no? And just trusting that. And I believe, just as you do, that my intuition is the key to answering all of my questioning. It's just because for me, I don't know about you, but it's just like your connection to universe, your connection to that voice inside of you that knows better than you, right?
Absolutely.
That is helping and is there in your favor. And I've been saved even from car accidents just from my intuition, where all of the logic would tell me, go ahead and do this, but then I would be like, no, I'm going to trust my intuition, and it has saved me countless of times. So it's something that I wholeheartedly agree with. Which brings me to my other question. You mentioned, I wanted to know how and why does a person find themselves to be off balance, right? How do they start to blend in everything that they want to achieve in their life? Because sometimes I know that we tend to try to put things like in compartments, right? I have my relationship in this compartment. I have my professional life in this compartment. If I don't have this figured out right now, there's no time and energy to look at this one, which in my opinion is a little bit of masculine energy, right? So if we're looking at it into the feminine, it will be more fluid. How does a person find themselves like off balance? And after that, can you explain how can they start to find that balance again?
Sure, absolutely. So people get off balance for a lot of reasons. Mine personally was a combination of things, but one that I think is very universal that a lot of people deal with is that they are living a life according to somebody else, right? Like their parents thought that they should be a doctor and they really want to be a photographer, or, they have this amazing career in fashion that every single one of their friends would die to have. But it's really not fulfilling their soul. It's really not like what they don't love to go in every day. So a lot of people get off balance because they think they should like what they're doing when it comes to their career, or they think that they should like who they're dating, because it happens in dating too, or who they're married to even. And so we just kind of keep pushing, thinking that something's going to change sometimes. And the old adage in dating is if he hasn't done it yet, he's not going to do it anytime soon. And the same thing applies to careers, in career situations or friends. So I think that's the biggest one, is really living according to what other people think. And once you can start to drop that, and trust me, it's very hard for some of us. For most of us, I would say it was very difficult for me. It still is. This is all a daily practice. But that's a huge step, is really, and again, when you will be able to do that, you will be able to care less about what people think when you start to care more about what's in here and what it is that you really, really want in here. Because you have to, when you start to do that self-assessment, the biggest thing you should keep in mind is do not judge yourself for what you want. You cannot judge you. This is a judge-free zone, right? This is a judge-free zone. So, and you need to honor what you're feeling about what you want and what you're feeling about what your life currently is. And where that disconnect and that friction occurs, which I mentioned earlier, and respect the desire. You have to respect your own desire and honor that and not judge it, and kind of just start to get very comfortable with owning that and accepting that. And another thing that I see with how people get off balance, and this really plays into the masculine and feminine balance and roles that you're talking about. So what's happened in this post-women's lib movement is that we are, women are generally taking on more and more masculine traits in their professional lives, in the office, in the boardroom, in meetings, and it works there. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not a good thing. I think it definitely works. I use it. I love it. It's a very powerful part of who I am. But what happens is you're charging along in your professional career, and it's making you feel good. Let's say you're aligned with your career path and it's making you feel you're, powerful, you are successful, however you define that success. It could be financial, it could be fulfillment, however you define it. You're successful, you're powerful, it gets you excited, and you're kind of in control, right? Or at least you feel like you're in control, because what you're doing, the action you're taking, is resulting in achievements and accomplishments and goals. You're achieving your goals. So sometimes what I find is women that are so comfortable in this masculine space, almost two things happen. One, they almost don't even want to admit that they want more than that, meaning, you know, a family, you know, a husband or a life partner, kids, all these other things that are like more traditionally female things to like, right? So that's one thing. They almost don't even allow themselves to like that, and they definitely don't admit it to themselves.
Yes.
And secondly, if that is something that they want, they are terrified of doing what's necessary, of taking the risks necessary, and being the vulnerable woman that they would have to be in order to allow that into their lives. And that's the feminine. And that's very hard to do. When you're not comfortable doing that, and when you're not used to doing that, and when vulnerability is like the worst thing you could wish on your largest enemy, you don't want to do that. And so you just keep burrowing into your career because it's comfortable, and you can at least see that you feel like you have control over your accomplishments there. So that's a big thing that I see.
Right. And for me personally, vulnerability is my source of power, right? Because it means that I am connected with my emotions. I'm actually feeling. And my part of manifesting what you want in your life is also about your feelings. It's not just your thoughts. So what I see that causes the balance as well is the fact that you have your thoughts. They're very powerful, but you're numbing your feelings and you're pushing them to the side. And then, you know, you're creating just like with half of your power, which is your thoughts. So it causes a lot of stress. But if you allow yourself to feel your emotions through and try to focus as much as you can on having more positive feelings and just focusing on the positive, then that's how you start to shift things around and you create more balance, right? So can you talk about a little bit on, you know, what can a woman that's really empowered in her profession, right, and wants to, like, secretly wants to have love, right? I've heard it several times from women who are out there doing amazing things, and they tell me, Nicole, like, yes, but I'm doing this. I don't have time and space or energy for my love right now. And to be honest, that's something that I said several times before. Something that I said several times. But in reality, I knew that the reason, and this is me, that I was saying it was because I didn't want to face the emotions that were there in my love life, right? And but I know that there's a healthier way of seeing it. So how can a woman that actually desires to have a family, to go out on dates, to, you know, allow masculine support in her life, how can she start to do that when she's been so, like, you know, hooked on her power when it comes to her profession? How can she just, like, start lowering those walls and allow herself to receive more love?
Absolutely. So the first thing that anybody in that situation needs to understand is, like, this is going to be very uncomfortable. Like, that's it. It's the foundation. You're doing something that you are not used to doing, that you are not a master at doing. It is outside of your comfort zone. And these are all very, very positive things, by the way, because if you want to change anything in your life, you have to get outside your comfort zone. But yes, it's not gonna feel great. It's just not gonna feel great. And so there are gonna be times that you're working towards this and working towards being more vulnerable and working towards letting your guard down, and it's going to feel like it's coming back to kind of bite you in the behind, so to speak. But it's not. It is, once again, it's a daily practice. It's an exercise in getting you to be comfortable with vocalizing what it is that you want when it comes to your emotional self and your emotional body. So again, no judgment, judgment-free zone. I just want, like, you know, I want everybody to know that it's going to be uncomfortable, and that is okay. You are allowed to be uncomfortable in this process. So the second thing to think about is always work with the end in mind. Meaning, if you really want a family or a husband or love or any of that, envision what your life looks like in 30 years or 20 years or even 5 years, depending on where you are, what life stage you're in. What does that look like? Do you have a family? Are you with a loving life partner? Do you feel settled? Are you in a home, or are you traveling the world? Like do you feel supported? Is there just kind of love all around you? If that's the case, look at that's the end goal, and look at where you are now. If you continue to do exactly what you are doing today and what you've done for the past however many years, are you going to get to that end goal? My guess is probably not. So what you have to do, you got to change something, because once again, nobody else changes, right? You are the only person that can affect change in your own life. You are the only person you have control over to do that. So, and by the way, this is all stuff that I had to go through myself, and I had to give myself this own pep talk, and it's not easy, it's not comfortable, but it is something that you have to do if you want to change anything. And by the way, like, this is applicable across the board. Like, if you want to change, a friendship or a family dynamic, these are all things that you have to go through. You have to honor what you really want, honor your feelings, be vulnerable, et cetera, et cetera. So the four actionable tips to really start to get back on balance. And so the first one is to feel your way to what you want. So you talked a little bit about this. Like, because you are 100,000% correct. It is not just your thoughts. And it would drive me crazy when I first started to get into this personal development work and doing my own work to find love that I wanted. I was like, man, if somebody tells me one more time that I just need to think positively, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because if I could think positively, I would be a billionaire by now. I would have 6 homes, I'd be traveling the world. I'd be helping millions. If it was just that easy, trust me, things would be different. But it is so much about what you feel inside. And if you keep suppressing that, which is the masculine, and if you keep putting a Band-Aid over it, and you keep focusing on your career and focusing on other things, other distractions, you're never going to allow yourself to actually feel anything. So feel your way to what you want. Where is the disconnect in your life? What are you avoiding? What are your biggest fears around going after this love, right? Are you afraid? For me, it was a fear of rejection. I couldn't handle it. I know everybody hates rejection, but I was just terrified of it, to the point of debilitation. I wouldn't, bad. It was bad. And so I just avoided really putting myself out there in any way, shape, or form that was going to have to risk me being rejected. Of course, what ended up happening is I was only attracting guys that were only giving their surface level too. It was the same kind of mirroring that was happening.
I love that. Please continue talking about that a little bit later on. I will appreciate it. The mirror is key. Yeah.
So you have to really feel your way to what you want. So what I got in tune with are what I call your top 5 relationship needs, right? So we all have, or, you know, some of us have checklists of the type of guy that we want, or the type of mate that we want. He should be 6'2", he should drive a yellow car, he should be this type of job, make this kind of money, whatever's on your list. They're usually things that, like, if you really thought about it, they could be sometimes superficial, but there's meaning behind those items on their checklist. So what I do with my clients is I have them whittle down to the feeling behind that bullet on the checklist, right? So if you want somebody that has a certain financial status, why do you really want that? Yes, you'd like to buy, maybe you like to travel a lot, or maybe you like a certain lifestyle, but what does that actually, how does that actually make you feel? Does it make you feel safe? Does it make you feel supported? Are you trying to control the relationship, or maybe control him so that you, or the situation in some way so that you feel like something's stable? You know, now once you start to look at it that way, things start to shift. It's like, okay, well, is it really just about being supported? Because then you could find a guy that makes you feel supported, that makes perhaps far less money than you think you needed, but you're still going to be 100% happy with him because he is making you feel supported, and that relationship need, that emotional need, is being satisfied, right? And then that cracks open your dating pool. It's exponentially larger, right? Now, on the other side, if it's more of a fear-based thing, well, I need financial security because you know, I grew up in a shaky childhood where money was always a problem, and I never felt safe, and all that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've built my own financial security, and I need somebody that is going to match that. Well, then it's like, okay, again, let's break down that fear. What would make you feel if somebody came to you that maybe wasn't your financial equal, but maybe he really respected the dollar, or he really respected money, and he really respected all the work that you've put in to make the money that you have, and to create the lifestyle that you have. Yeah. And if he would never pose a threat to you in that way, would that be okay? Would you still feel safe with that kind of man? The answer is probably yes. So again, you're seeing that things start to shift. Like what you really are looking for in a partner starts to shift. So the free gift that I have for this is that worksheet to help everybody get really in tune with their top 5 relationship needs. And so you'll have things like, mine are respected, heard, committed, honesty, and passion. So when I was dating, it was very much like, okay, is he hitting at least 4 out of 5 of these? That's your benchmark for that. You should be hitting at least 4 out of 5, 100% of the time, 5 out of 5, 60 to 80% of the time, because nothing's perfect, right? So that's how you start to feel your way to what you want. Then what you need to do is you need to start creating boundaries. What that does is start to allow space. You start to cut out the noise, and you create space for the good stuff that you really want, all those feelings that you just figured out, to come in. Yeah. And that is saying no to bad dates that you know from your intuition that they're not going to satisfy your top 5 relationship needs. Saying no to maybe work projects that are taking your time away from spending time on your dating life, or if maybe you have a date that conflicts with a work event that you don't really need to be there for. Figure out a way that you can create more time for the date, which is for yourself. You know, creating time for yoga, self-care, maybe not taking on a stressful family dynamic, or dealing with like an overly needy, maybe self-centered friend that you have, perhaps, that's always like asking you for things and taking more than they're giving or contributing. Once you start to create those boundaries, say no more, and say yes to yourself and yes to your feelings, you'll see you'll have more space and more time for love. The third thing is, after that, invest in what you want. So you want to invest in that date versus investing in going to that work event that you don't really need to be there for. So you want to, for me, it was doing online dating. I never thought in a million years I would go online, and I had to make a radical shift and bite my tongue and just go online. And I went on an app, and the first guy that I went on a date with, we've been together almost a year now. So, and I'm very, very happy.
I love that.
So,
I've heard so many stories like this, about like the first guy and how it's just like meant to be. I just think it's just like you're in alignment. You know where your intuition takes you, and that's just where it happens.
Yeah.
That.
So you have to invest. Like, people, like you say, people always say, oh, I don't have time, I don't have energy, I don't have the money to date or to find, if I wanted to hire a matchmaker or something like that. You look at it this way. You spent how many years creating this amazing career and amazing life that you have, right? Like, that took work, that took investment, that took money, that took sweat, blood, sweat, and tears. Your dating life, anything that you want to be extraordinary, and you should have an extraordinary dating life and love life, it's going to take time and work and investment. The work and the investment that I made was in myself for like 3 or 4 years to really clear out all the crap that I needed to, and before I could find this man that I knew I wanted to be with and spend my life with. That was my investment. It was my time, it was my money, it was daily practice. And then the final piece was investing in vulnerability and getting rid of my fear of rejection and going online and doing that whole thing, because the reason I avoided online dating was I just felt like I was going to be rejected all the time, like swipe left or however it works. Everybody was going to be swiping left on me, and I didn't want to know about it. But I did. I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, I've exhausted everything else. Clearly something's not working, so let's try something different. And so investing in those feelings, you've already created the space. So now it's time for you to take action and invest. And then the fourth and final one is you have got to get rid of the guilt. You got to drop the guilt. There is no shame in you doing you. There's absolutely no shame in that. If you want love, girl, go get you some love. If you want, to get married, it doesn't matter what anybody else is saying, or it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, or, how they think it'll affect your career, or what your family thinks, or anything like that. If you have to say no to friends sometimes in order to choose a date and to choose your love life, that's what it takes. The people that love and support you and love and support your dream and understand that this is something that you truly desire in your life, they're going to get it. They're not going to bother you about it. They're going to let you go do you, get your date on, and they're going to support you. They're probably going to help you out.
Yes.
More than anything, So I think women, at least for me, a lot of it, because I had to really start saying no. My job required that I be out and be social a lot and at events. And I got to the point where it's like, I'm not doing anything for me. Like, I'm not working on my long-term stuff, my long-term goals. But I really like to work, and I really like to commit to my jobs and my career positions and my boss and team and all that. And so I always felt bad saying no. I felt like I should be there. I felt like I should show up. So I really had to work on that. I really had to let that go. And I've had friends that got mad at me and dropped out of my life because I was working on my relationship and I was working on trying to find love. And coincidentally, they weren't too happy in their own love life. So there's that mirroring again that comes up. But You got to get rid of the guilt. Again, it goes back to respecting what you want and not judging what you want. Judgment-free zone. Anybody that's going to judge you can be, pushed to the outer circles. They don't have to join you on this journey. This is your life.
That's beautiful. And I think that I was noticing what you were beautifully sharing was that this whole mirroring process, because what I see is that sometimes this thing of being off balance is, in some cases, a decision to not face your fears, which makes you feel very defensive. And what happens is that you get what you defend against. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's always a mirroring. It sounds like a riddle, but it is like you get what you defend against. So, and explain it in other words is your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, right? So you can be thinking something, but your main emotion is I have to defend against it. I'm so defensive, but your focus is on the negative side of what you want. Right? It's not on what you actually want, because if it's on what you actually want, you will be at ease, right?
Right.
Like everything could come at you and you wouldn't take it or make it personal, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like what you were saying about your friends, that, what happens is that when you start to make yourself a priority, that starts to trigger other people. But that's a good thing. It has nothing to do with you. They're just seeing something in you that's not, it's bothering them about something that they're not doing in their life. And what you do is that you just let them get on their own pace. But it inspires them. So it's just like not making things about you. Like I had people who swiped left on me, people that I wanted to swipe right. and I had to go through those emotions when they swiped left. And that's okay. I would continuously meet up with the same person over and over again. I was like, okay, universe, I get it. What do you want me to look at this? So it's just like, it's not about me for any reason whatsoever. Like whatever thing this person's going on, that's okay. But it's not about me. Things that will always choose me. So whatever it is that you're defending against, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable at first, it's for your highest good. So you learn to detach from what other people are doing, and it's just about going within. So I just think that's a very beautiful message. Like, did you have to go through that process of how did it go for you? Like the whole process of facing rejection. How were you were able to heal that? Because I know that's like a really big fear for a lot of women. Right.
So what happened to me is that, and this happens a lot with my clients that I see too. Forever, I always said I wanted to be in a relationship. I wanted to be with my equal. Right? And it's my favorite thing for a client to come to me and say, I want to be in a relationship, but... And it's like I immediately know where this is going. Because I always said, for 10 years I said, I want to be in a relationship, But then I was always dating guys that were emotionally unavailable. That's a fun one.
Yeah.
They were emotionally unavailable, and everything, we would be together, and it would be great. And they would always, they would probably always like me more than I like them. I would say in general, not always, but mostly in general. And what I started to realize once I really started looking at myself and figuring out, I'm attracting these guys that I don't really want to be with, and yet I'm still being with them. What's going on? So what I figured out was, because I was so afraid of rejection and being heart-shatteringly, that heartbreak, that soul-shattering heartbreak that just, puts you in a bed for, 6 months, I was trying to avoid that 100,000%, as much as possible. So much so that I was dating guys and attracting men that would never be fully open with themselves either. There was an emotional block there, just like there was an emotional block with me. And that at that point, before I realized what was going on, that was okay with me, I think subconsciously, because what it meant was I never had to put my heart on the line. I never had to risk heartbreak. It was never even an option because I never really fell deeply for these guys, ever. These were safe options. These were all safe relationships from an emotional standpoint. Now, the biggest thing that happened to me is I fell in love with a guy that could never really love himself. He could only love himself conditionally. And when I realized that, I mean, and this was like, and I feel like we all have one of these. This was like your Mr. Big, right? The guy that's just like circling you for however many years that you let him circle you. And he's in your life and then he's out of your life. And then, but you just feel this such connection and you dream about him and you think about him and he calls like that. And like, it's one of those like really intense connections with another human.
So we're back once again. The video cut off a little bit, or internet connection wasn't really, well, my internet connection wasn't working really well. But so you were saying about that this guy that circles all around you and comes in, goes out again, and you feel a strong connection.
Yeah, you're Mr. Big, right? Carrie's Mr. Big was around for, what, like 10 years or so before he actually got his life together enough to be with her. Usually that doesn't happen, sadly. But, so yeah, this was the first time that I had fallen in love. That was the big difference. And so it really got me thinking, you know, what is it about this guy that I feel so attached to? Like, why am I so, like, attracted to him on a soul level? And it just through, you know, going through the relationship, what I figured out is that everything was very conditional. He only liked me conditionally. I had to be, you know, I had to swear less. I had to live in a certain city because he didn't live in my city. So like he could only like entertain this if we lived in the same city. Like he put up all these conditions, right? In order for, before he would even make the decision about whether or not he could be with me or love me or like me or whatever. And then through our relationship, I realized he also was putting conditions on himself for a lot of things. Like he judged himself as hard as he was judging me. And I had this aha moment and I was like, oh my God, he doesn't love himself unconditionally. And neither do I. That was the big thing. I must not, because I was trying to bend over backwards to be this person that he thought he wanted or that he thought he needed. And I just had this big like revelation of like, oh my goodness, like that's what I've been. I don't love myself. I don't love myself unconditionally. I love myself, but it wasn't unconditionally. There were things that I would beat myself up about, get in my own head, blah, 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 blah. And once I had that wake-up call is when I got to start working on all of like myself and that fear, because that's where my fear of rejection was coming from. I was going to be devastated if I couldn't satisfy everybody's criteria and have, you know, every guy like me or every date that I went on like me or every boyfriend that I had like me. Because that was the only way I knew how to feel worthy or to feel of value. And that's what happens when you don't love yourself unconditionally. That's kind of one of the manifestations of it. So after work, I mean, it is, you know, it took a while because this was a deep one. This was like one of those like way back, like wounds that I had to heal from a long time ago. And so it took a minute, you know, it took a couple years to really go through all the levels that it involved and raising my vibration in such a way that I could really feel unconditional love. And that was, I don't think it has to take multiple years. That was just my experience. I help my clients move through things like that quicker, because I don't want anybody to have to go through it for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, however. But I was doing it all by myself. I wasn't really, for the first couple of years, I wasn't really working with any coaches or doing any classes or anything like that. So that's why my process was extended. Yeah, mine too. You can truncate it. You can shorten that down. So that was that. And once I really learned how to love myself unconditionally, and there were some other things that came along with that, but that was the main one. I was like, okay, I can do this. It's going to be okay if somebody like doesn't like me. It doesn't matter so much, because the person that I'm looking for and that is going to like me, like, he's going to honor me as much as I want to honor myself and as much as I do honor myself. And that's what matters. And that's all. And, you know, you kind of just put your blinders on and you kind of just go, all right, I'm going to do this and it's going to be okay. Because let's be honest, the reality of it is those fears, they never really go away. You'll carry them. You'll carry the, you know, their presence with you a lot. You'll be reminded that that was something that you once were ruled by, and you no longer are. But it will come up again and again. What will happen though is it'll come up. You'll look at it and you'll be like, ugh, we did this already. It's time for you to go. Right? I'm not listening to this fear anymore. I'm not going to be controlled by this fear anymore. I know that what's on the other side is greater than what I'm worried about. It's greater than what I can even imagine. What's on the other side of that fear is what I really want.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that, and I want to thank you so much for your contribution, because it's true. Like, at the end of the day, it's just a practice of unconditional love with yourself first and foremost, and that's going to be reflected on the outside with everybody else, and just dropping your defenses. And I think it's so beautiful that we just go through this entire process, like you said, of guilt, of not setting up our boundaries. It's a process that once you start it, you will be so happy that you did, because it's the most beautiful work that you can do for yourself, right? So it's like you can't be for others what you're not being for yourself, right? Instead of giving all your energy to others, first start to give to yourself, because that's just gonna, you know, show them how it's done. So I want to thank you so much. Our life is just about balance and not giving up on what we want based on a fear, right? It's important to know that a fear is just an illusion. No matter how real it seems, no matter how many times it has happened before, if you stop focusing on it, your life will get better. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Would you mind describing to the audience the gift that you have for them? Like, I think that they would really like it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. What it is it's the top 5 relationship needs worksheet that I mentioned earlier. And what I lead you through is the process, and it only takes, I would say, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. And I lead you through the process on the worksheet of how to identify those fears. So you have a list of feelings on the sheet, and I have instructions that I walk you through. But basically, you're going to start picking feelings and emotions that really resonate with you, that really make you feel amazing. And, you know, when you have that dream, that vision of like your 60-year-old life or your 50-year-old life, or however, that all those loving feelings, all that like high vibration that you've generated, that these are the emotions and the essence words that are going to help you get there. So you'll see there's a chunk on the list, and you'll just start picking some off, and then I have a way to get you to narrow them down, because usually we like to choose like 20 and we really only need 5. As crazy as that sounds, it's true. We really only need about 5. So yeah, so that's that. And then you can use that. You can carry it around in your purse. I was carrying it around in my notebook for a while, to be reminded that that is your guidance when it comes to love and relationships and other things. But mostly you can really apply it to your dating life. So always kind of have those 5 words in the back of your mind when you're going on a first date, or when you meet somebody, or in your relationship.
Well, thank you so much. This has been beautiful. I want to thank you once again. And this is it, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed the interview, and you can download Julia's gift right on the link below. So I'll be seeing you then.
Thanks so much.